Hi everybody, I'm going to talk a little bit about the full 203K and what they call the consultant K or consultant homestyle loan. And both of those loans have a little more involved with them because it's an unlimited amount of repairs you can do. And everybody asks me like, how many repairs can you do based on the house? And on the 203K, there's no difference. You can do as much repairs. You can buy a house for 10,000 and put 200,000 in repairs as long as the value of the house is there in the neighborhood. On the home style, it's 90% of the value, so that's a little bit different. But again, not something you need to know, but be aware and make sure you talk to your loan officer or talk to me about that. So on both of these, they require there to be a consultant involved, and the consultant does what's called an SOR, or specification of repairs, or I always call it a work write-up. So this is an example of what the beginning of the work write-up looks like. And you can see on here it has categories: masonry, this has fireplace damper on it, and concrete slab. So it goes through the different sections. And when you look in this area, you can see it's separated by materials and labor, and then you get a total. And so that's done for 32 categories basically. And what happens is when the consultant comes out, the first thing they're going to look at is what we call the minimum standards. And the minimum standards are going to be life safety, health issues. So if there's dangerous electricity, if the house doesn't have heat in every room, if there are tripping hazards, if there aren't handrails in the right place, if there's broken glass, if there's peeling paint, all those are sort of the life, health, safety issues, and those will be the first things that have to be addressed. Now, none of this work is done up front. All of this work is done after the loan closes and the buyer owns the house, or if you're refinancing, after you close on your refinance, that's when the work starts. So what happens is we're identifying what has to happen for the minimum standards, and those will be the first items that have to be addressed when the contractor comes out and what the homeowner has to fix first. So once we're done the mandatory items or completing minimum standards, then we move on to the customer's wish list. So the owner of the house or the buyer of the house could want a new kitchen or new flooring, or maybe the roof only has a few years, let's put a new roof on. So then we'll address those items, what has to be done first, then what the homeowner's wish list is. So I always recommend that people get a home inspection when they're doing a 203K or a home style, because when we walk through and look at it, we don't always know everything that's going on. Sometimes the HUD consultant is a home inspector. You have to check the laws in your county and or state. So sometimes the HUD consultant could do it. Sometimes an independent home inspector does it, and then the HUD consultant goes off of their information. So if the furnace looks like it's okay, and we haven't put a furnace in the bid to have it replaced or repaired, but then the home inspector comes in and says, hey, this furnace is on its last year or 2 years maybe, then we could add that to the bid and have that replaced now, so we're not creating an additional expense for the homeowners in the future. Everything's in one loan and they can have the whole house in good shape. So when we look at this list, we're going to break everything down in materials and labors like I showed you on the piece of paper, and then what's going to happen, we're going to come up with a total. Once I see that total, the first thing I do is I call the real estate agent and I ask them if these folks buy this house for $150 and they put $75,000 in repairs at $225, what's the neighborhood selling for? If the neighborhood's selling for $225 to $250, then my advice would be don't buy that house. Find a house that's already fixed up for $250 and don't go through the work, the expense, and the challenges of renovating a house. Now, if the property's worth $300 or $325 or $350, then yeah, this sounds like a go to me, because what happens is you're building instant equity. The best thing about renovation financing, which I say over and over again, is you're able to build instant equity. And that's a great way to have money in your pocket, money you can use, and investment in your house. You never know if and when the market's going to downturn, and if you buy a new house and you're sitting on a bunch of equity, you're going to be in a much stronger position if anything does happen to the market, or there's a price adjustment, or if you want to in the future, that gives you more money to go ahead and put down on a new house when you sell your house. So once we have the whole specification of repairs, we have the input from the client of their wish list, we have the minimum standard from the repairs for the minimum standard for getting financing, and we have any repairs that need to be done because of the home inspection. Then we take all that and total it up, and then we give a blank sheet with that information on it to the contractor, so the contractor can come out and put their estimate together. Now, there's no approved contractors. People always ask me, oh, do they have to be FHA approved or FHA certified? There's not really any such thing as that. What happens is we ask for references, the contractor's license, their insurance information, business references, and customer references that have done similar jobs to the one we're looking at, and that's how we evaluate the client and the contractor, and see if we can accept them. So what happens is you want to get more than one bid if you can, and sometimes you can't get more than one bid. Sometimes you meet somebody, you hit it off, and they're the person, and you decide you're going to use them. The benefit, in my opinion, of getting more than one bid is you get to see if the contractor shows up on time, if they respect the appointment, if they can value engineer anything for you to make the deal better. We have one we're working on now where the homeowner thought they had to put a new furnace in, and the contractor came out and said, wait a minute, this furnace is only a few years old. Why don't we just add an A coil to it and an outside condenser, and we'll get you your air conditioning that way. We can alter the duct a little bit and save you a lot of money. So when your contractor comes in and value engineers, that's a great thing to have. So you see if they respect your time, you see if they actually show up, you get a feel for how you're going to work with them, and you always want to ask them for references. Even though we're going to check their references, you always want to ask them for references. If you can go see some of their work at some house they've worked on, that's even better. But you want to find somebody that you can work with, because you're going to be living with this person in your house for 4 to 6 months, depending on the scope of the project, okay? And there'll be one general contractor that's in charge of everything. And so they will hire the subcontractors that'll do the different trades, block people if you're doing an addition, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, roofing. So they'll hire the subcontractors, but everything will go through the general contractor when you're ready to start the work. So what happens now, we have the bid from the contractor. The consultant checks that bid to make sure the numbers make sense for not only the scope of work, but how it's priced. You're not allowed to front load the job, and because a lot of these projects, you don't get a lot of money up front, if any, then you want to be in a position where you know that the contractor hasn't front loaded the job, getting a bunch of money up front, and then if something happens and they leave the job or you terminate them, all your money's spent and all the work isn't done. So the consultant makes sure that that's okay. So we have all that married together. Then we send the SOR, which is the specification of repairs, or the consultant's work write-up to the appraiser. So the appraiser is going to appraise the house as if that work is already completed. And that's how you determine what your after improved value is, which is what we work off on renovation financing. It doesn't really matter what the house is worth when you're purchasing it, it's what it's going to be worth after it's improved. The appraisal comes back, the appraiser checks to make sure that we're hitting all the minimum standards with our work write-up or our specification repairs, everything included in there, they appraise the house. Once that's ready, then it goes into underwriting like a regular loan, and everything is done there like any other loan would happen. Then you're going to go to closing. So when you go to closing, you sign all the papers, you pay your down payment, you pay your closing cost, and then if there's permits on the job, which typically there are, you'll be a check cut to pay for the permits, you can order the permits. I have a lot of people say, why don't we get the permits up front? We'll just have them already waiting. I'm like, don't do that, because we never know what's going to happen. Wait till the loan closes before you invest the money in purchasing the permits. Get the permits, then you can start the work. Once the work is started and the contractor's completed a certain amount of work, that's when they can get a draw or a payment or money. The way that works is there's no draw schedule. A lot of times when people are doing new construction, you get so much when the foundation's in and so much when it's framed and so much when the doors and windows are set. This is totally different. Whatever work is completed when the consultant comes out is what you'll get paid for. So if you have a job where you're doing demolition, you're replacing the windows, you're putting some new plumbing in, if the consultant comes out and 50% of the demo is finished, you'll get paid for 50% of the demo. If 6 of the windows are in, you'll get paid for installing 6 of the windows. They pay you for whatever is completed the day you're there. They add all these numbers up, and let's say it's $12,000. They're going to hold 10% of that till the end of the job. So you'll have $1,200 that's going to be put away till the end of the job. That will be the final draw. Then the check is issued, made out to the contractor and the homeowner for that amount. Check comes in, homeowner signs the check over to the contractor puts the money in the account, and this happens throughout the project as money is needed.
If you run into an issue where you have work that's not in your scope, let's say you go to tear a wall down and you find out it's termite damage, that's what your contingency is for. And just like the limited and the streamline, there's either a 10 or 15% contingency of money that's set aside for repairs that are unexpected. If you run into something like termite damage or a structural issue, go ahead and do the repair. The bank will make sure they use a contingency to pay the contractor. If it's a wish list item where you picked out appliances that were $4,000 originally, and now all of a sudden you saw appliances that are $6,000, you need to get that approved by your lender. So don't just go spending money that hasn't been approved by your lender out of your contingency funds. At the end of the job, when the final draw is taken, there could be some money left in the contingency fund, and there could be some money left from draws if you didn't spend it all. We try to get it as close as we can, but it's never perfect. So at the end of that time, what happens is whatever money is left in your escrow account would reduce your principal amount on your loan. So if you had borrowed $200,000 and there's $3,000 left when everything's finished, you now only owe the bank $197,000. Now, important point here. Your mortgage payment, your principal, interest, taxes, insurance does not change. They don't go back and re-amortize and say, okay, we're going to do a 30-year loan now on $197,000. It stays on the $200,000, but because you only owe $197,000, you're paying the loan off quicker. So your payments will go to be reducing your principal quicker. A lot of people, after 6 months to a year, when the work's finished, they'll come back and refinance the house, take advantage of the equity they built, and give them the ability to get a lower interest rate and potentially remove the mortgage insurance. So it's a great way to purchase a house and do your repairs. These are most of the highlights of how it works. But again, if you have any questions, you can always reach out and call me. If you have a scenario, let me know. I'm happy to help you with it. My name's Lewis, and my number is 443-695-8513.